Hello, and welcome to the Empress podcast. I am your host, Jessica, known in the online space as Jess the Empress. I started this podcast to help you be present with yourself, cope with chaos, and simplify your life. I do this by combining psychology, behavioral science, and the tarot. I have a background in mental health, specifically a master's in clinical social work from USC, and I'm a professional tarot reader. So get ready to have a nurturing, creative, and empowering experience with me as we use practical magic. Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to August, everybody. I'm so happy you're here taking the time out of your day to hang out with me. I appreciate you. Welcome or welcome back to the podcast. We're going to get into this month's topic. And the title of this episode is When Life Doesn't Go Your Way: How to Navigate Delays, Setbacks, and Unwelcome Change. So, as I sat down for pulling the tarot card for the month, I just kind of felt like, I feel like August is not, it's not going to be bad, but I feel like there's just some tough conversations that we need to have. And sure enough, the card I pulled was the Wheel of Fortune in the reverse position. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what this means, but I want to just say something really quickly about reverse tarot cards. So when we pull a tarot card upside down, that is not a problem. I know that a lot of people will initially pull away from the tarot deck or say, "Oh no," and look at that like it's a bad thing. But really the cards are neutral. They offer a lot of insight. And I think even if you have a sort of negative or adverse reaction to a card, maybe again, like you feel some anxiety, that is room to explore what you're holding on to. Like, what are your thoughts and beliefs and maybe assumptions about one, a card coming up in the reverse position, but then two, the Wheel of Fortune reverse. Like, does that mean you're going to have bad luck? Does that mean you've been cursed? Does that mean you have bad karma? These are questions that a lot of people ask me when I do tarot readings. And we're going to talk about that particular mindset a little more broadly. But I just think it's important to know that when we get the Wheel of Fortune reverse or any tarot card reverse, we just have to check ourselves. We just have to understand, like, again, where we might be automatically making up rules or shutting ourselves off from an opportunity to explore our own mind in a deeper way, our own feelings in a deeper way, and then sort of like the larger lessons of life in a way that's grounded instead of fear based. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode. I want to acknowledge something about delays, unwelcome changes, and setbacks. They're frustrating, right? Like we don't like them. And I feel like so many of us automatically think, why is this happening to me? Sometimes we even feel like the universe is out to get us, we're being punished, like things like that can really float through our mind. I don't necessarily believe you have to have a religious upbringing to think these thoughts. I just think it's something that we do as humans. Sometimes we want an explanation for why things are not going the way that we want them to go. And we're going to get into that as well. So let's talk about, what these delays, unwelcome changes, and setbacks really are. Okay. So a delay is an interruption to progress. So let's say that the job that we've interviewed for was postponed. The offer didn't come. And then we're just like kind of sitting there in limbo and we don't know what's going to happen. That actually happened to me, and that was a huge redirection in my life. So I thought I had a job locked in like right after grad school. It was a place that I had interned with, it was with people I knew. I got through all of the exams, all the things I needed to do, all the interview processes. And then, boom, they were like, "Oh, there's a hiring freeze, and we don't know when it's going to open back up again." And so I found myself having to make some difficult decisions. So my progress was definitely interrupted at that point in time. But let's talk about an unwelcome change. That is a shift that comes out of nowhere. And it's usually something that we don't ask for. This could be like a partner leaving or a health diagnosis, or maybe a rule changes and then the plans fall through. All of that can be part of what I would consider an unwelcome change. And a setback is what it sounds like, it's a regression. You were doing well and now you're not. So this can involve relapse. This can involve working really hard for something just to have it, fall apart. And all of these things have something in common. They feel like a door is being slammed shut. They feel like very destabilizing usually when they happen. And I think it's okay that we acknowledge we feel destabilized by these things. But I also think it's important that we don't stay in that state of instability for long, because when we stay there for too long, we can create more problems than solutions. We're also going to get into the solutions today. But I also would just want to talk about the reason why we initially kind of hate all of these things happening to us. There's psychology behind this. So our brains really love predictability and control. So the brain is really good at predicting things. Like it's a predicting machine. Now, what I mean by it's good at predicting things doesn't mean that it predicts things right. It's just good at being able to pull from what it already knows and put things together. So it's predictive in that way, not necessarily accurately predictive. But when reality doesn't match our expectations, we feel, a lot of panic. We feel discomfort because we had sort of predicted in our minds that things were going to go according to our plan. And again, it can make us feel very unsafe. Now, for people with trauma, chronic stress, and unstable histories, this change can feel very catastrophic, even if it's not actually a dangerous change. But you just need to know that you're not wrong or bad for feeling destabilized or feeling like you are in danger, even when you might not be. It's just your nervous system doing its best to protect you. But things can get tricky when our nervous system is protecting us in old ways and not helpful ways. Because, life changes all the time on us, and sometimes we do feel blocked, but then we personalize that, and it's not always personal. That's one of the bigger energies in the Wheel of Fortune. Because it is a major arcana card, it represents life on a grand scale, not the day in, the day out, not something personal. It is actually not personal at all. It is a lesson about life, right? If you're alive, you will experience the Wheel of Fortune. You will experience the flow of things going up and going your way, and then the flow of things going down and not going the way that you expect them. That wheel is always turning. It's turning for every single person that is alive. However, if we turn it on us and then we say, oh my God, I'm being punished, I have bad karma, blah, 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 we dig ourselves deeper and we actually create the block that we think that we have, which is interesting. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But let's talk about these mindsets a little bit more, okay? Let's talk about a girl who believes that she's cursed or she's being punished every single time something goes wrong. And then let's talk about a man who feels difficulty is just a part of being alive. So let's talk about them both applying for the same job. We love a job, right? We love a job opportunity, but they both get rejected in this scenario. So the woman, she spirals and she's like, why does this always happen to me? I'm not meant for success. Maybe I'm just being punished. Everybody else has it easier than I do. Whereas the boy, he's obviously upset about it, but he's like, okay, this sucks, but, I can learn something from this. Where are there other opportunities for me to try? So the difference between these two people is that the girl, she viewed her setbacks as a verdict of her worth, whereas the guy, he didn't. He's like, this is, painful, but I'm not gonna like die, and it doesn't mean anything about me. So the girl, she became stuck in resentment, and the boy was in motion and stayed in motion. And I think that's a deeper part of what the Wheel of Fortune brings to the table. It is an understanding that things are always in motion, that nothing really is stagnant, even when we think it is. We just don't have a full picture, and that's okay. We're not always going to have the full picture, but we need to really understand our mindset here and how it can help us or how it can hurt us. When we're not in control of our mind, we will often be in a reactionary place about what's happening in our lives. Like we're going to be reacting to it from that place of negativity or from that place of instability. And this could be inner stability. And it just doesn't help us out. Our reaction really does matter. We have to accept new situations and adapt to them. Well, we don't have to. It is a choice. We could obviously choose not to, like the girl I mentioned, but I'm going to encourage you to adapt as much as you possibly can to the things shifting, even when they're shifting not in the direction you want them to go. What's also really interesting to note about the Wheel of Fortune is it's ruled by the number 10. And this has a lot to do symbolically, obviously, with change, but with evolution as well. So, again, we might be perceiving that this is the worst case scenario. And then from that perception, we tell ourselves a story about how this is a setback and this is the worst thing ever. And I want to validate that there definitely are times where things happen and it is a genuine setback. And, we have to recover from that and it has to take time. But that also doesn't mean that there isn't anything we can't take away from this situation. I don't mean that we need to find the positive in really horrible events because I think that's gaslighting you to tell you you should be positive when there's nothing to be positive about, that you should be grateful for like the worst. Like I don't want you to be there. But I want to find a balance in all of these things. And actually, that is what the Wheel of Fortune also symbolizes. It is the totality of things, right? It is that good and bad happen. They happen simultaneously. And when we can't control the things outside of us, we have to redirect our attention to what we can control. I'll get into a little bit more of that later. But my point is that not everything that feels bad is actually wrong. And when we're breaking an old pattern, when we are shifting out of a self version of ourselves that just isn't working, we will often perceive the changes that we're experiencing as being off track, as being stuck, as being wrong, as like everything's up against us. But it is just life, it really is. And let me tell you, it is so tempting to play the victim. It is so tempting to be like the girl in the mindset that I told you about just a minute ago, believing you're cursed, believing you're punished. Like it's very alluring sometimes because I think we get a lot out of that. And we get a lot out of that emotionally. We can drain other people, we can drain them for sympathy, we can get help. But I think sometimes we end up sabotaging ourselves because we don't really learn the value of cultivating a more neutral mindset. And the guy, the example I gave there, that's the individual that had a more neutral mindset because that person didn't avoid the fact that they were, going through something that they hated. They didn't avoid the fact that they felt emotional pain. They didn't pretend like they didn't care, right? They're like, oh, this is hard, but also things are shifting. I don't have answers right now. I'm uncomfortable. So, what can I do about that? There's a super rad psychologist, Tara Brock, and she calls this radical acceptance. And this is fully acknowledging the present moment without resistance. It's daily work. I'm going to get into how we do it. And I've also linked some information about her in the show notes so you can find that document and then you can click on it. It's a Google Doc that I've shared and you can look at all that information plus all the other information I got for this episode. But I think it is a wise thing to normalize the ebbs and flows of life instead of being so resistant to the fact that life will not always go the way that we want it to. So let's hop into some of the things that we can do on a daily basis. One of the first things is to name it and not judge it. So labeling what's happening, but not personalizing it. Here's an example. Let's talk about that delay again. You would say, okay, I am experiencing a delay. I am feeling uncertainty. And you want to identify where that might be in your body. This helps the brain shift out of the emotional reactivity and into a calmer, more observational mode. From that observational place, you can again make a better decision. instead of just reacting to what's happening and quickly falling into, a more victim mindset. Dr. Dan Siegel calls this principle the name it to tame it principle. Somatic grounding is really, really helpful. You want to just press your feet onto the ground. You want to breathe in for 4 seconds. You want to hold for 4 seconds. And then you want to exhale for 6 seconds. I've talked about this in other episodes, but this is called orienting. And this is all about slowly turning your head to look around you, naming objects like a blue mug, yellow pencils, green plant. This tells your nervous system that you're safe. You're orienting to the present moment, to what is literally around you, instead of getting caught up in your mind and trying to predict the future from a place of only emotional, heightened feelings, which again, don't always provide the most accurate assessment of what could happen. And when you're facing challenges and setbacks, even minor ones, using the can control ritual is really helpful. So, what this looks like is you're facing that challenge, you're identifying you're getting a little escalated, maybe you're spiraling out a little bit. Grab a piece of paper or your phone, whatever, type down or write the things you can control and the things that you can't control. When you do this, you're training your brain to see movement instead of where it ends up getting frozen, because it'll just stay stuck on what it can't control, but it will try to control what it can't control. And that's really where the trap is that we focus on the wrong thing, or we focus on all the things and then get stuck in analysis paralysis. Let's get even clearer. Okay. I'm going to be specific about what you can control. You can control your breath. You can control your daily habits. You can control the story you tell yourself, what you focus your attention on, whether or not you ask for support, whether you rest, the goals you set, and the actions that you take. What you can't control: other people's opinions or actions, the outcome of your efforts, the past, global events, weather events, sudden loss or illness, whether people understand you, and how long it takes to heal or achieve a goal. I say all of this so that you can have an accurate perspective, because having an accurate perspective will actually free you. You will be in real power. When we're learning to tune back into our bodies, when we're learning to take control over our life and actually be an authority and have trust from within, a real part of that is actually power. If we are using our power inaccurately, we will never reinforce safety. And why is that? Because we'll focus on things we can't control. It will get us all riled up internally, and that takes us farther away from actually doing something that we can control and getting that positive feedback. Again, reinforcing that we have real power, not control over everything, but real power. With the Wheel of Fortune reversed, there could just be a gentle reminder from this card that change is something you don't have control over. I know you don't like it. I don't like it either, but it is the life that we're in. We're all in this together. And we can't control the fact that things are shifting. Things are shifting wildly. If you pay attention to the news, you're probably losing your mind like I am, because it's just a shit show. And I try not to get caught up in it. There are times that I still do, because I'm human. I'm affected by these things that are happening. And my partner is affected by these things that are happening. My friends and family are. It's like you can't get away from being impacted. And I have to do what I'm telling you guys. I have to take those breaths. I have to orient myself. I have to remind myself, you know what? What can I control? What can I influence here? Because life is going to happen regardless. The sun comes up, the sun goes down. And with the whole world spinning around us and all the things we can't control, I want us to feel a greater sense of trust and safety within ourselves, because I think that's a really beautiful gift that we can give ourselves. And then we can teach that to other people. When we're calm, people get that. It's not like, again, we're dissociated. We're calm because we're somehow avoiding, the inner turmoil we don't want to feel. No, we're calm because we understand fully that we can't control a lot of things. And so we're going to put our heads down and we're going to do our best day in and day out. I've got some news for you. Life is going to continue having delays and setbacks and unwelcome changes, but this is just a part of being alive. Your power is not about controlling every single thing that happens to you. Your power is in choosing how you are relating to what is happening. That's another way that we create safety in our body. I'm going to tell you what, having that mindset of I'm being punished, I'm being cursed, this is bad karma. I have seen it time and time again spiral people out. I have not really seen it help people function. I haven't really seen it increase the quality of people's lives. Quality of life is a really important thing to me. And if you're having a lot of inner mental and emotional turmoil day in and day out because of what you're focusing on, we get to challenge what you're focusing on so that you can have a better internal experience. The story you tell yourself about your experiences shapes how you actually live in the world. It is so important to choose a story that empowers you rather than one that victimizes you. My clinical supervisors would tell me to surf the waves. And so, what she meant by this was like, okay, yeah, this is a crazy storm you're in right now. You can either drown or you can learn to surf, sink or swim, essentially. And I appreciated that perspective because it put the power back on me to decide what I was going to do about the waves that I was navigating. So, a more neutral mindset is just remembering that some things go wrong and some things go right. Things can be difficult and you can handle them. Instead of telling yourself this shouldn't be happening, move into radical acceptance and say, okay, this is what's happening. And what can I do about it? And it's so important to tell yourself, like, yes, this is difficult, but it's not personal. So, again, notice what's working and what's not working. You can be grateful for what is working while absolutely hating what is not working. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with somebody who feels like the world is against them. Let them know that they're not alone. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye.